AITA for telling my pregnant sister to stop complaining about the consequences of her poor life choices. My younger sister has rushed through life decisions, like marriage and buying a house, and constantly complains about the consequences. She never seems happy for my milestones and only focuses on her own. After listening to her vent again, I snapped and said, "Actions have consequences." She got upset, and now my mom says I should be more supportive. My F29 sister, F28, is only 18 months younger than me. I met my now husband many years ago and have a 2-year-old, and I'm currently pregnant. Meanwhile, my sister met her now husband only a little under 2 years ago. Everything in their relationship has been very rushed. They got engaged after a few months, bought the first house they found together, moved up the wedding at my parents' expense, and then she got pregnant 3 months before the wedding, so they had to move it up again. Different life paths, fine, but I can't help but feel a little weird about it. She's never happy for me with my milestones, doesn't seem to want to get to know my daughter, and only talks about her milestones. Anytime I hit a milestone, she's like upset she hasn't done it yet and rushes to do it. It's not like she's jealous exactly. It's not meanly, but she clearly can't stand the idea of not having something right now. She's now 6 months pregnant. We are due 2 months apart and won't stop complaining. Every time I talk to her, it's complaints about how the house is run down, how it isn't fair they had to settle because of the market, how her husband is gone so much, he has to fly often for work, how she doesn't know what she'll do for childcare, etc. These are all reasonable complaints on their own, but they just grate on me when she says them. I feel like if she hadn't rushed and had saved up, she might have a nicer house. Or if she waited to get pregnant, her husband would have been able to get a job closer first. He's been looking, but no luck so far. I might be TA. Anyways, I snapped and said, "Actions have consequences. So stop complaining about the consequences of yours." She lost it and was like, "What are you even saying to me? How can you be so unsupportive?" And then my mother called me upset and told me that we need to be supportive of family, and they've supported me when I made choices I regret. The thing is, she isn't saying she regrets these choices or taking responsibility. She's just complaining. She takes a lot and doesn't say thank you or acknowledge what we do for her. I'm just fed up with it. But again, I know I could be wrong. So AITA, relevant comments. Commenter, I'm confused. What choices do you feel she should regret? And what exactly do you expect her to do about this now? Reading this, there seem to be a few issues that you're conflating. She doesn't celebrate you. She isn't as interested in your daughter as you'd like her to be. She is complaining to you about things in her life that she's struggling with. For the first two, it's hard for me to judge, but you don't have to be close with her if you don't want to be. For the third point, I think it would be more than reasonable for you to set a boundary where you say, "Look, you need to stop offloading on me. I've got my own stuff going on." You're allowed boundaries. However, it seems that you're instead focused on judging her for her choices and blaming her for things that I'm not convinced are her fault. Her husband being away for work would be hard. Childcare is difficult. I don't think she's an AH for being stressed. I'm leaning YTA because this post is very focused on where you've decided she didn't do things the right way. Commenter, my brother is 6 years older than me, so keeping up is impossible. I just can't imagine if he framed everything I did as rushing to beat him to stuff. He met his wife at 15 and they got married at 24, but I met mine at 22 and we married at 23. Did I rush to beat him to marriage? I can't imagine doing this with my sibling, and we don't even have a healthy relationship. This seems like maxed out sibling rivalry on OP's end. Story 2. AITA for not using my trust fund to save my best friend from homelessness. In my country, every kid automatically gets a trust fund from the government that they receive when they turn 18, and the amount depends on how much the parents contribute to it. Most people get around £1,000 to £2,000. My best friend received her trust fund back in April and got nearly £2,000. She was really generous and decided to treat our entire friend group to dinner at an expensive restaurant. She also bought us multiple gifts, including giving me a paintbrush set, a book, a ring, lip balm, and a scented candle. We all thought this was super sweet of her, and we were extremely grateful. A month later, I also received my trust fund on my 18th birthday. It turns out that my parents had saved up nearly £20,000. I knew they had been saving up money for me, but I didn't realize it was this much. I decided to learn from my friends' actions, and I took everyone out for brunch, and I bought them each jewelry. Not long after, my friend's family went through financial troubles. My friend used what was remaining of her trust fund to help out her family, but it wasn't enough. They're currently facing eviction if they don't pay the rent. My friend reached out to me last week asking me for help, begging me for over £100. I feel bad, but I refused. I'm going to uni very soon and I need that money. Buying gifts is one thing, but paying her rent might make her dependent on me, and she might continue asking me for rent money because I agreed one time. My friend was really upset at me, calling me selfish. She said it's not like I needed that much money since my parents would be paying for my uni fees and accommodation fees. Meanwhile, she has to take out student loans and get 2 jobs. She has 2 younger siblings aged 6 and 10, and she called me stingy stingy for allowing them to be homeless, even though I have more than enough to help. I felt guilty, but I told her it's not my responsibility to take care of her family. AITA, relevant comments. Commenter, NTA at all. Your friend's parents are letting her down, and it's not your responsibility to take care of her family. Honestly, taking everyone out and buying presents was mostly irresponsible. That money is meant to take you into adulthood and pay for education or to help get into an apartment. Your friend probably learned it from her parents, the same parents who can't pay rent. It means her parents have burned every bridge and have no one in the world to ask for £100, except their 18-year-old daughter's friend. Lending money to people changes your relationship permanently, and not in a good way. Not lending money to people changes your relationship permanently. Again, not in a good way. I'm sorry this happened to you. Commenter, honestly, if I think the relationship is worth it, I may lend the 100 if it's disposable, and especially if it stops eviction, but I wouldn't be expecting it back, so as to not stress myself. And the next time they ask, I'd ask, when are you paying back the original amount? Commenter, I don't know why anybody would give an 18-year-old $20,000 no strings attached, but if I could afford 100 to keep a friend homeless, I would do it in a heartbeat one time and explain that to them. Commenter, one time my friend asked me to borrow $250 for bills. She'd never asked for money before. I knew she was going through a tough time, so I said yes. I didn't loan it expecting it back though. When she asked me about paying it back, I told her don't worry about it and just pay it forward to someone else if you get the opportunity. It didn't change anything with our friendship and she never asked for money again. So a friend asking once doesn't necessarily mean they'll continue asking. Story 3. AITA for telling my dad he's the one who gave me the ultimatum, so he needs to deal with the consequences. My mom died when I, 17, was 5. My dad remarried when I was 8 and made a blended family with his wife and her 2 kids. Then they had 2 kids together, so I have step and half siblings. My mom's family were a big part of my life for the first 6 years, and then my dad and them fought because my dad had met his wife by then, and he didn't like their reaction to the news. Essentially, he wanted to invite them over for my grandparents' yearly family BBQ, and my grandparents didn't want to include them. They told him they couldn't accept my mom's replacement. He got mad at them for feeling that's what he was doing, and he told them they could forget about seeing either of us again. He tried to keep me from them, but they filed for grandparents' rights, and Dad's lawyer said they'd win, so he said I could see them once every 3 months for 4 hours. It was way less than I was used to, but it didn't stop me being close to them. He invited them to his wedding and they didn't come. It pissed him off more, and then he got super weird about it, and he suddenly started demanding invites again for his wife's kids when I was invited. And then when my half-siblings were born, he was including them in the attempt to force my family's hands, but they never invited them. They did ask me if I wanted them there, and I said not really, so they didn't change their mind. My dad always bitched about them whenever my visits would come around. He really hated that I went, and my step and half-siblings couldn't. He tried to tell me I should advocate for them all to be included. I never replied to him because it was easier not to. Once I turned 14, he got worse with that stuff, and he'd complain that I was calling and texting them, and that I kept in touch more than the once every 3 months. He'd tell me they hate my siblings, that he didn't want us to have our family. I told him that didn't upset me or make me mad, and it didn't change that I wanted to see them. The day I went back to school, senior year, my dad told me since I was graduating in May and I'd be 18, he needed to make it clear that I will need to choose, because I can't keep spending time with people who refuse to include most of my family, and he told me I'll have to choose my family or them. I told him the them were my family and I'd choose them. He didn't expect the answer. He got pissed and told me I should always choose siblings over extended family. Then he acted like I hadn't given my answer, because he told me when he and his wife throw me the graduation party that I won't be allowed to invite my mom's side. I told him he didn't need to throw me one because they would, and I'd made it clear my choice will be them. Dad told me that isn't how it works. I told him it is because he gave the ultimatum and he needs to live with the consequences. He accused me of twisting his words and disrespecting him by throwing that in his face. AITA, relevant comments. Commenter, NTA, you are in no way wrong. That is how an ultimatum works. He knows that. 1. Your father had no right to try to replace your family. 2. Your father had no right to try to insert his children and stepchildren into the lives of people that were holding on to the last living representative of their deceased daughter. 3. Your father had no right to try and separate you from people that love you. 4. You lost a parent that will forever be in your heart. Your father should have respected that. 5. Lean on your mom's family as they love you. Your father is in love with a fantasy. Commenter, NTA and I agree with all this, but I'd add that it's kinda messed up how the grandparents initially reacted to Dad getting remarried as a replacement. It was 3 years after the death, and while it might sting, it's messed up to get mad at him. If other family members invited to BBQs and such were allowed to bring SOs, it's weird that he wasn't. He didn't react well to it at all. all and should not have put OP in the middle. But again, it's weird that they expected OP's dad to be celibate after his wife died. When my half-brother died, my dad, we shared a dad, fully expected and wanted his DIL to marry again one day. She doesn't want to, but that's her choice. I don't think grandparents needed to invite step or half siblings along to things that OP was invited to. But if before meeting his new wife, OP's dad was invited to things, I could see where he'd be upset and hurt that when, after 3 years, he couldn't bring his new partner. Commenter, NTA. It seems that the adults in this story are all being very, very childish. These things do happen, however, and lucky you are smack dab in the middle of it all. Your father is trying to gaslight you, BTW. Your grands cannot see past your mom's death and that people do move on, i.e., your father's remarriage. Do you have any sort of relationship with your father's wife? Just wondering, because she was only mentioned at the beginning of your post. Will you be going to college? Is there any way you could have a serious discussion with him away from home? Like at a coffee shop or bakery? Someplace neutral? There's a lot not being said here, and an earnest, one-on-one conversation is in order, especially if your father is thinking that you'll be an adult once you turn 18. Show him you are currently the adult here, and, in the nicest possible way, ask him WTF was he thinking when he ultimatum you. Edit. I now understand the court-ordered visitations will end once OP turns 18. It's so sad that there even has to be an ultimatum. OP. Kinda. I'm not close to her, but I show her respect as one of the adults in the house. I don't think of her as more than that, though. I only have one mom. It's because I'll be an adult in the eyes of the law, and he thinks that means I should make the right choice, that I should be able to see how wrong it is to have a relationship with people who deny the whole family. I don't think a talk will really change much. What he wants is for me to pick him and the step family over my mom's side of my family. Story 4. AITA for accidentally ruining my friend's kids' safe food. So earlier today, we were at a mutual friend's kid's birthday party with all our kids. Standard kid birthday party, BBQ food, hot dogs and hamburgers. I was helping the hosts on the BBQ and slinging dogs and burgers to all the kids and adults. One of the kids at the party asked if we had any bologna. Told him no bologna, only hot dogs and hamburgers, and jokingly said, but hot dogs and bologna are basically the same meat, just in a different form. Kid didn't take either, grabbed some chips and went off and did their thing with the other kids. About 2 hours after the party, I get a text from the kid's dad, which I found a bit odd. We went to school from kindergarten to graduating university, but not let's go do something this weekend kind of friends. In the text, he is losing his mind that I ruined the one food they could rely on him eating, bologna, because I said it was the same meat as a hot dog, and explained that their son is a very picky eater. I genuinely feel bad because I know how hard it can be to feed a kid when they don't want anything you cook, but I had no idea how deep it ran with their son. The hosts texting me asking if the other friend reached out and said that I did nothing wrong, and that it was being blown way out of proportion, and if the kid had such a good aversion, it should have been brought up beforehand by the parents, but I can't help feeling like a total jerk all afternoon. AITA? Relevant comments. Commenter. NTA. Not your kid, not your responsibility. If the kid only eats bologna, which is a serious problem in itself, then the parents are responsible for providing bologna. Also, you just told the kid a fact. Anyone that gets upset over their child learning actual information and blaming someone else instead of dealing with the fallout themselves isn't parenting correctly. Commenter. NTA. They're blaming you, but this whole situation was well within their control. You made an offhand joke. They could easily tell the kids it was a joke, it's different, and then describe some safe version of why it's different. Or they could have told the host in advance about this issue and spread the information around. It was a dick move of them to go to a BBQ and not bring what their kid would need, not warn you in advance of what is effectively a secret they need you to join in on keeping, and not tell their kids a good answer afterwards. Also, I was a childcare provider for 18 years. There are ways around food issues, but the parents need to be willing to listen to the kid about why they're picky. If this one likes bologna, it might be an autistic sensitivity to texture and the unexpected. If they like fruity candy but not berries, that would confirm the suspicion. If it's a dislike of the idea of animal products, then it might be time for some impossible burgers and cheesy lentils. I have watched a lot of kids who the parents said were too picky for anything new and introduced them to loads of stuff, but did it in a way where the kids didn't feel pressured to have more than a bite, but I was going to eat it and enjoy it. Kids are tiny humans with their own opinions and interests, and once you get to know them and ask them about themselves, it's usually not that hard to get them to open up a bit on their foods. They have different palates physically from adults, and they should be allowed to have bodily autonomy and have a say in what they eat without their parents acting resentful and pissy about it. Thank you so much for watching until the end. If you enjoyed our videos, please don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to stay updated with our latest ones. Have a great day.